Welcome to the Theology in Progress podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm still Josh.
Still Josh, hasn't changed. Welcome to this week's episode, podcast. Do we call these episodes, or do we, I don't know what we call them. I guess we can call them episodes.
This week's conversation.
That's conversation.
So hip, we don't even use the word episode.
Oh yeah, that's actually better. Welcome to this week's conversation. Glad that you could join us. Pull your cars over or turn your work off, and we're going to take a journey down. I don't know. I'm trying to be weird. Welcome, guys. It's so good to be back with you. Me and Josh are going to have a conversation here. Hope you guys will join us. And hopefully you listen to episode 25. And I'm trying to blank on the name.
What makes me a Christian?
What makes me a Christian. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check that one out. We're going to be doing a follow-up question to that conversation, not episode. We just talked about this.
Yeah.
To that conversation, we're going to be following up with it. And this week's question was a question Josh threw out at the end of episode 25. And what was that question, Josh?
Are we making nominal Christians? By we and the process of making, I was getting at the idea that are we creating nominal Christians because of the way that we're handling stuff in the church? Are we making Christianity or the church or church services so much like the world and so appealing to the world that it's easy for people to be nominal Christians?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
making Christians look more like the world.
Yes.
I feel like we need to read that passage in Revelation. If you talk about nominal Christians, you kind of have to read that passage, right? We could summarize it. I don't actually want to read it because I feel like it's too cliche.
You talking about the...
Yeah, spew you out of your mouth if
Church of Laodicea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. So...
I'm feeling really lost right now in this conversation.
Yeah, it's fun. We're just kind of... This is a real conversation. We want to just explore. So, are we making nominal Christians in the things that we do in the church? You know, this actually, I like this question. It's a good one to chew on, but it's kind of a dangerous one to jump into because what do you say? Yes. And then we're kind of indicting all of the church for doing things wrong because obviously they're not doing it as good as we are. And then if you say no, well, you can clearly just look around and see that that's not quite correct either.
Yeah. The really easy thing to do is to point a finger at the churches who are on the cutting edge of the seeker-sensitive movement, who are doing all kinds of things to pull in unsaved people. And, they're the ones that we typically point the finger at. So that's the really easy thing to do.
Yeah. But
I want to dig deeper than that and try to examine, are there things that even the conservative hellfire and brimstone churches are doing that can at times create an opportunity for somebody to be a nominal Christian?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the more telling answer to the question. Because if there's something that those churches are doing, and then there's something that the ultra seeker-sensitive churches are doing, then there's, I think I could make a logical conclusion from that there's they're both doing something equally ineffective.
That's a good word. Not wrong. Ineffective.
Yeah.
That's good. So let's jump right in. Since the conservative churches that you pointed out are the real answer to the question, we'll save those for second. Sure. So people have to listen longer.
We have you in our trap.
Now you are part of the conversation forever. So let's jump in and talk about some of the seeker-sensitive ones.
Side note, real quick, before we jump into that.
Okay.
If you guys want to join a Theo group, you wouldn't have to wait for the next 10 minutes of the conversation in this podcast to get to the question that you really want. You can just ask us in person or talk about it in group in person. But anyways.
We'll still probably make you wait.
Okay.
But you could ask us live. That is true.
Live. We have webinars every month.
Every month. So
get on there and ask us questions live.
Please join us.
Okay, sorry.
All right.
Let's continue.
Now that we're back from our commercial break, brought to you by Theo Groups, product of Theology in Progress. We'll talk about, we'll point some fingers at the easy target, which is the not the hyper grace movement. I don't know what I'm thinking about. What the seeker sensitive churches. Yeah, hopefully you guys like this because we're kind of scattered tonight. But let's talk about some of the things that those churches do, or the results of the ineffectiveness, as you talked about, that produces seemingly nominal Christians. Do we want to, and then let's just talk about what a nominal Christian is too, dig that in, and so then we can kind of have a trail to blaze between what we're talking about.
That's a good place to start. Let's start with the definition. I would define nominal Christians as Christians who claim to be a Christian, yet don't necessarily hold themselves to the practices that a normal Christian would hold to.
Yeah. They're not demonstrating, they're not producing fruit.
Yeah. If I wanted to use Bible jargon, I would say that a nominal Christian is somebody who doesn't produce the fruit and follow Christ the way the New Testament instructs us to.
So what if you say but that's based on your definition of what a Christian should be, or the way that we should look like, right? Because again, going back to episode 25 a little bit, you guys can go and reference that. In our increasingly postmodern world, the lines on even what's acceptable. I mean, so you say that a Christian should what? Should wear a skirt down, women need to wear skirts down to their ankles and keep their hair in a bun.
Yeah.
Or should you be tatted up and, wear skinny jeans and a muscle shirt?
And that was the whole point of the video that we referenced at the beginning of the last episode was...
Exactly.
Hey, I'm gay and I drink and I'm a Muslim.
Yep.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And...
So is there certain expectations then that good Christians should follow or should live by?
Well, we kind of hit on the end of that. Hit on that at the end of the last episode when we talked about how love and self-sacrifice are really the determining fruit of a Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for somebody to get up and love the people who are nice to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard, and I would argue probably impossible, for somebody to get up and love the terrorist who broke into their home and is raping their wife and murdering their children.
Sure.
That's not something that you ever see.
No.
But if a Christian
does doesn't come naturally.
I think they're demonstrating something
supernatural.
Yeah. And that demonstrates a life change. One of the things, this bugged me because I saw it in more stuff on Facebook this week.
Good Facebook.
We really seem to just skip over the whole love your enemies part of the Sermon on the Mount. And we also skip over the part in Romans where Paul said, while we were enemies, while we were against God, He made a way and He sent His Son to die for us.
Yeah.
I don't think that registers in our minds.
No.
That when we hated God, God loved us.
Yeah.
And if God tells us to forgive as we have been forgiven.
Well, and again, going back to what you're talking about, the Sermon on the Mount, it seems like we try to either find an overly spiritual interpretation for that. So we try to find any way to not take what Jesus says as literal. Like, He could not have actually meant that we love our enemies. And what you're talking about here is, we are commanded as Christians to follow Jesus. So, very simply, if you want to ask what a non-nominal Christian does, somebody who's actually, when we think about like a sold-out, on-fire Christian serving the Lord, what does that look like? It looks like somebody who follows Jesus with total abandonment and does the things that Jesus did. And so we can look at Jesus' life, and this is one of them. Mm-hmm. They love your enemies. Not only do they just love them in practice and say, oh, yeah, well, I still love them, but I'm going to sue them, or I'm going to still hold a grudge, or I'm going to blah, 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 blah. Fill in the blank. We come up with all kinds of excuses. I'm going to go and give myself for them while they're still my enemy. We don't have to make reconciliation for me to start forgiving them. I'm going to go out of my way to make reconciliation on their behalf. And
instead we tend to kind of... I think I can generalize by saying this. I think we tend to think of when Jesus says love your enemies, He means have some kind of an affection in your heart and a desire to see them saved. But it's all right if you go out and kill them.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
I hope you get saved. Ha ha ha. And then pull the trigger.
And we'll put it off on we're getting into almost just pure pacifism. We'll move on. But no, you're right. It's kind of like, yeah, I love them, I hope they get saved, but this is their just due punishment because justice and everything, right? And it's the fact that we deserve death. That would have been justice. We still deserve death just as much as they do, but it's only because of the same sacrifice of Christ willing to give himself while we were at war with him that we receive grace at all.
Yeah.
And see, this is where the Christian life becomes so hard, even for me to follow, right? Is the fact that you read the Gospels, follow me, and that includes the cross. That includes going all the way to giving of yourself in the same way that Christ gave of himself for us. And that's the hardest thing to do. But if a person can do something like that, this is really giving them themselves, really dying to themselves. I think we can point to that person and say, that's a Christian.
Yeah,
that's somebody who follows Christ. Okay, so if you don't do that, you're a nominal Christian. And God said he will spit you out of his mouth. Aforementioned Revelation passage.
Okay, so if we define a nominal Christian as somebody who doesn't live up to or adhere to the...
At least doesn't attempt, because... Again, that's a tall order, and we're all on different.
Live up to that all
exactly, and so, but whether you're repentant about it, living in open sin, these are things that would define a nominal Christian.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's get back to the original question, and let's poke a finger at the seeker-sensitive churches first. Is their approach to church, to evangelism, even discipleship, conducive to creating nominal Christians?
I think it depends on a church-by-church basis. So this will be our way to kind of get around our overgeneralization and pointing our finger at seeker-sensitive churches, because actually I really like the idea behind seeker-sensitive churches, and that is they're seeker-sensitive. They want to see as many people come to Christ as possible. Mm-hmm. And so they structure...
Using whatever means they can to reach them.
Exactly. And so they structure their services and their message for maximum appeal and maximum exposure. Right off the bat, I think that's a great idea. And I think that it can even work sometimes, right? Because again, I find it hard to judge... I can't judge somebody just based on their actions, right? We can't, as much as we're even talking about nominal Christians, we can't judge somebody just solely on the basis of their actions. It's a heart condition. But here's where I think churches in the seeker-sensitive camp often get things wrong, is it's two things. It's A, what is the message that's actually being preached? And can somebody who comes to the Lord there, quote, come to the Lord, answer the question, what am I saved from? Now the follow-up question is, what am I saved for? But you've got to be able to answer that first question. What am I saved from? Is there an accurate understanding of the biblical theological narrative of saying, I was in sin, I was at war against God, as we talked about, and now I am turning my allegiance to the Lord, dying to myself, and everything that happens in there. Is there that foundation of knowledge?
Yeah. I also want to point out that just because a church can be labeled seeker-sensitive and that they use whatever method they can to reach as many people as possible,
sure,
doesn't mean that they won't have a good, strong discipleship program to pull people in and train them up after they've been saved.
And that's what my number 2 point is. The second one is, what's the discipleship process look like afterwards? Yeah. Because again, decisions only go so far, but it's really the life-changing things that come after. Because if you're making the decision to make Jesus Lord, that decision is life-changing, and it will change your life. And so how are we teaching and training and helping people walk out the Christian life?
Okay, so do you think it would be fair to say of seeker-sensitive churches, if we're going to generalize like that the atmosphere can create nominal Christians if they don't have a good discipleship system in place? I hate to use the word system. That sounds so cold.
Systematic.
Well, if they don't have a good process for discipleship,
sure,
that's a better word. Because, I mean, really, if you when it comes right down to it, if you're thinking about a seeker-sensitive church doing whatever they can to reach people, I wonder if it might be better to just say that their church services are more evangelistic than some of the other churches, because they're geared more towards the unsaved, not necessarily building disciples.
I think the bigger problem for most seeker-sensitive type churches, though, is actually the gospel presentation. Even though, yes, they're, quote, more evangelistic in nature, from my limited exposure, I feel like the problem is actually the gospel's not being preached as faithfully.
Sure, and that can be there too.
As it should be. And then, because if that key piece isn't there, your discipleship process isn't going to be there either. Now, you can have a problem with the discipleship process and still be preaching the gospel. But if you're not preaching the gospel, you're going to have problems with your discipleship.
Yeah, I agree.
System. So, whatever you want to call it. We understand that discipleship is a relationship. So, here at Theology in Progress, we're all about relationships, hence growing in Christ through every conversation.
Together. The word together should really be in there, but I think we actually kicked that around a little bit at one point.
We did. It was in there in one iteration or a few. But it slowed the words down. Yeah, exactly. Growing together in Christ? Anyway, okay. We'll have that as the post-conversation conversation.
So, yeah,
but what's your point about the discipleship?
Well, that's pretty much it, because if you have a good discipleship process, the gospel is there.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my next point right after that.
Yeah, and I think... So here's another problem, though, with discipleship systems. Again, not liking that word, but we're using it. The process is... sometimes their focus is probably turned around on more of evangelizing. So maybe somebody gets saved, and then the goal of their discipleship class or program would be to get them out into the neighborhood, trying to bring more people into the church to win them to Christ. Nothing wrong with that on the surface. That's just fine. That's a great thing.
It has the potential to be really shallow, though.
Exactly. And do we actually get down to some of the deeper life-changing issues, some of the deeper questions that we all have, the doubts that will undoubtedly come up?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we have really good potential to go to the parable of the farmer and the sower, a very rocky, shallow soil, and somebody can spring up. I mean, we've all seen people get saved like that, and they jump up, they're on fire, and they do that. But because they didn't have the chance to develop deep roots, they ended up withering and dying away. Because things are going to get tough. And I think that has to be our number one priority when it actually comes to discipleship, is to get that person strong enough, one, so that they can know Scripture well enough to turn around and be able to present the gospel well. Make sure they've got a great testimony at that point, and they do. They need to be out there sharing it with as many people as they can. But we have to make sure that they're ready to handle all of the spiritual warfare and baggage and difficulties that come along with this difficult decision. It really is.
I think that's a good segue into looking at some of the traditional, more conservative churches as well. Discipleship is probably the key issue there.
Mm-hmm.
Basically my entire life I've been in fairly conservative churches, and it seems like a lot of the discipleship emphasis was on learning doctrine or getting better at doing spiritual disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the extent of discipleship in the churches that I've been a part of. Doesn't mean that I've understood that accurately or even understood the heart of the people who are leading those discipleship programs, but that's the gist that I got from it. And so, if you have discipleship like that is just basically creating something to teach people doctrine or to get them to be more consistent in Bible reading, is that also something that can create nominal Christians?
I think so. Absolutely. Because like you said, we will end up relying too much at that point on our knowledge. We will lean on that as a crutch, and it can actually become really dangerous because then we start thinking we're better than other people.
Yeah.
Because we have the answers. You know, we know what's right and wrong, and then we can start making. I'm always afraid of this category because, again, I'm like you, grown up very conservative churches. And even so, the way that we kind of began this conversation of talking about nominal Christians, I really caution myself when talking about stuff like that because I feel I have a tendency to judge other people, especially, because I study theology and stuff like that, and so then I can get a big head about, I know more than everybody else, so clearly I'm a better Christian because I know more. It's like, well, that's not the case, and this is where I love, the whole classic James is, faith without works is dead. And you can have all the knowledge and things in the world, but if that knowledge isn't accompanied by practice, then you actually have no knowledge at all. Mm-hmm. Because an inherent part of the knowledge of Christianity, and that's why I said you've got to know what you're saved from, that's the knowledge, and you have to know what you're saved for. That's the practice, right? Because we're not just saved for the sake of ourselves. That is part of it.
Or for escaping hell.
Or for escaping hell, right? This goes back to the Abraham blessing. Yes, it's a blessing for us to receive salvation, but now we're part of that fold and we have to go and we have to be a blessing. And that's where the evangelistic aspect comes into it. So that's why I think discipleship is actually such an important thing, because it's not for you. And see, this is where I think the conservative church misses it, is we think that it's about us. Spiritual disciplines, like you mentioned, right? Those are to make me better because I have to be a better person. Mm-hmm. I loved your article that you wrote this week. Don't shit on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be the past couple of weeks for you guys listening, but don't shit on yourself. Man, what a problem that is for me, and I know a lot of other people, because growing up in conservative churches, there's a level of perfection that we have to live up to, or we feel that way at least.
Oh, yeah.
There's that stigma in the air. And so we always feel like we should be. And really what we should be doing is living for others. When we start doing that and we get our minds and our eyes off of our own selves, man, like the Christian life starts making so much more sense then. Because then everything that we learn, everything that we bring in, all of our discipleship training and everything begins to have a real purpose and reason for impacting the lives of other people. So that
Absolutely.
way we kind of balance like the shallowness of, the excitement that we have when we first get saved, which is great, but it has a tendency to be really shallow just because you don't know anything. And then, but it also, breaks us out of our rut of just, dogmatic theologizing where we just sit around and talk to a microphone all day.
It's kind of cool though, because I know you guys can't see this, or you're not actually here in the room with us, but it's raining and thundering outside. The lights are down low in here, and it just feels like we're getting serious, stuff done. I feel like we should be surrounded by a ton of books with a fireplace in the corner.
We definitely need that.
And the electricity is out or something.
Yeah, we definitely need that. I don't know, it does. It feels... I like this environment, so...
I do too. This is kind of perfect. This is perfect for reading.
You get the little storm going in the background.
If... oh man, I lost my train of thought.
You're fine. Okay.
Because when we... You're right, we do have that shallow, super energetic charisma when we first get saved, and then it can tend toward getting stuck in a rut, getting too dogmatic in what's right, what we think is right and wrong, and we end up starting to tend toward legalism and being comfortable with where we're at. And man, one of the greatest things for me to realize in life has been the fact that I thought, even as a teenager, that, man, I had this Christianity thing figured out. Super simple. And you just had to do X, Y, and Z. And, 10 years later, 28, and I don't have anything figured out, really. No. I mean, I'm still struggling to understand grace, for goodness sake. And that's about as basic as it gets when it comes to the gospel.
But I think that's the sign of truly starting to figure it out, which is a paradox.
That's kind of funny, isn't it?
It is. The more you think, the more you start to realize you don't understand grace, you're finally, I think, starting on the path to understand it. Because it doesn't make sense. There is no reason why somebody should love their enemy. That is stupid.
Yeah.
That does not make sense.
Yeah.
That's foolishness. Everybody knows that if you love your enemy, they will take that opportunity to kill you. But grace says, you can kill me and I will love you anyway.
Yeah.
And somehow victory is achieved through that. It blows my mind still to think about. I mean, when you recognize that, that's when you fall on your face in awe of Christ and what he has done for you. I mean, that's the life that causes life change that you want to happen. Legalism has no place in grace when it comes to, that kind of grace, because then I want to serve and I want to do all the things that the law requires of me because I want to show God how much I love him. Not because, and out of appreciation, not because he's making me or dangling me
or I feel like
over the fire of hell, or I feel like I should. Exactly. It starts coming from a place of pure desire.
Yeah. And I know I've referenced it before, but I think that's what God was talking about through Jeremiah when he said, I'm going to circumcise their hearts.
Yep.
It's not just going to be an outward sign of the covenant. That will hold them to the law. Their hearts are going to bend toward the law and by nature do what the law requires.
Exactly. I think you're right.
Okay, so when it comes to making nominal Christians, are we making nominal Christians in the way that we handle church? And I think our answer so far has been, if you have great evangelism and you figure out ways to reach all kinds of people, but you have shallow discipleship that doesn't actually get at a life change, you can make nominal Christians really easily. Mm-hmm. And on the other end of that, if you have a discipleship program that emphasizes head knowledge and outward behavior, you're also missing the life transformation. Oh. So really, if you want to avoid making nominal Christians in your church or just in your personal evangelism and relationships with other people around you, focus on the life-transforming work of the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And put Jesus up there in front as the great God that he is.
Yep. And that's important. Look, we're all afraid of becoming Pharisees, right? But
some of us are.
Some of us are. But here's the thing. Here's really where the Pharisees got it wrong. Because Jesus even said the Pharisees have it right. Except for one problem. They don't serve others. They had not love in their heart. They started doing it to point at them rather than to point at others. And there's no reason why you have to choose one or the other. But it's both of those things walking together. Because again, if the Pharisees would have understood the law as Jesus says, then they would have done those things normally. And so, for true understanding's sake, when we truly understand the gospel, when we truly understand grace, we will not understand it, and that not understanding will push us towards action, I think.
All right, good stuff. Closing question. What has been your experience with discipleship in the past? Has it been focused on life transformation, or has it been focused on something else, like teaching you how to evangelize, or teaching you the right doctrine, or just getting you to consistently read your Bible? What's been your experience with discipleship? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to interact with you and learn from you and gain a little more understanding from what you've been through. And yeah.
Sounds good. And if you guys want to support Theology in Progress, you can go to theologyinprogress.com/donate. Sign up to pledge to give to us weekly, monthly, yearly, one-time offering. Whatever you give just goes to help support us and what we do here in this ministry. We will use all the proceeds to pump right back into Theology in Progress and help this ministry grow and reach as many people as possible. You can also click on our link at christianbooks.com and go and buy all of your Christian books and apparel and blah, blah, blah there. And a portion of what you spend there goes to us for nothing.
About the same price as Amazon, I've found.
Yeah. So,
and we get money. You don't have to spend anything extra. We just get a little commission.
Just a little commission. So, anyway, that's a great method to support the channel as well. And then also just like, subscribe, and share.
And we'll keep you guys up to date on all the new stuff that comes out and make sure that you have everything you need.
Yep.
So, thanks for listening. Glad you guys were in this conversation with us this week. Looking forward to next week with you guys and the upcoming July webinar.
Look for it.
Awesome.
It's going to be good.
So,
see ya.
Make sure you're getting the latest updates about Theology in Progress by subscribing. Go to www.theologyinprogress.com/subscribe.